All right, welcome back. This is a video for CSC 234, talking about Module 2. So you can see the dates here for 2022 have been posted, and the module's open. So what I want to look at is what's going on here. So we've got some reading. The most important part is 6a, which is going to talk about how functions work in general. And then 6b is, well, how functions work with things like vectors, more complicated stuff. All right. I'm going to talk about M2T1 here because I want to discuss how you can work with Xylabs. Now, if you ever get stuck on one of these Xylabs and you're having trouble getting it working, fair enough. You can always just choose to take the code, write the code separately, and submit it. I'm fine with that. But I'd like you to try working in Xylabs to get a feel for how the autograder works and things like that. All right, so when we look at the problem we're solving here, it's fairly simple. I'm converting laps to miles. We are told a lap is a quarter mile. So if I say 4.0 laps, that will give me 1.0 miles. Here you see, about 7.5. You get, not quite 2 miles. Cool. So what's interesting about this is we have to define and call a function, and we have to also write the output code. So the reason this matters, well, let's look at this. If I run the autograder, it's going to tell me some things. Actually, it's going to just probably fail badly here because that didn't tell me anything at all. I have no output. But what's the program supposed to do? It's supposed to do two things. So I've written this here. I started writing my function. I've given it this name. So what I can just say is user miles. Let's do this. We'll say double user miles. Just since it's called user laps, I'll call it user miles. Equals user laps times 4.0. Okay. Return user miles. So this function, you pass it the number. Let's see. Oh, it's going to be divided, isn't it? Yep. Because 4 laps is 1 mile. So first things first, right? Okay. So let's see here. So I'll write my code here, and let's confirm what it's asking for. So it's saying the main program takes input, calls the function, and outputs the result. Okay, so this is one thing separately. So this has no input or output in terms of text, right, or keyboard. There's no cin, no cout. Here we do. We're going to do cin, and we'll say laps. Let's declare that variable first. Double laps. Miles, there we go, cool, that's good. Okay. Miles equals laps to miles laps. Okay, looks good. Now they ask us to do a little bit of formatting here with the set precision and all that, but the first thing we want to do is connect what I call the plumbing, or the wiring, depending on what metaphor you prefer. I think plumbing kind of represents the fact this can get a little messy sometimes. So this function simply takes one value and converts to another value. And then this code does everything else, which is the input and the output. But the processing all happens in this function. All right, so now when I run this, let's see, my program expects input. So let's try, well, what's one example they gave me? If I type in 2.2, it should output 0.55. Sounds good. We'll try that. Now, why, you might ask, are we even writing a function separate from just putting the code in here, right? Because I could have just said, cin laps, miles equals laps times, 0.25 or divided by 4 or whatever, and then cout. But the thing is if I did that, the only thing that code can be used for is a situation where someone's typing in a value and then they get the answer printed out. Maybe you're working in a graphical user interface program or a website, or it's on a server, or it's on a smartphone or sports watch. So you might not have cin and cout. But this function here, no matter what device you're on, whether it has a console or not, or any kind of text input or output, it can still run this function. So maybe what this would do is instead display, the lap counter on your phone or something, or on your watch. So that looks good. So far, so good. So now I want to go to submit mode. Now in submit mode, it's going to grade it, and it's going to pass several automated tests to it. This is usually where people break down, because they may find their program gives the right answer, but they got 0 out of 10 on the autograder. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Again, at least for this first couple of labs, If you can't get the autograder to work, we can live with that. You could just turn your code in by running the program, zipping it, taking a screenshot like you would do if you weren't doing it in Zybooks. But if you can do it in here in Zybooks, then that's fine too. So here I see, and I could turn on only show failing tests, right? Now what I see here is this returns the right values. So here we see 26 miles is a marathon. That's 104 laps. Okay, fine. Or 104 quarter miles. So what this is saying is in their code, they're calling laps to miles, and they're getting the right answer. So those work. It means the function works properly. But we lost some points, and that's for this reason. They expected, well, first of all, 2 decimal points, but also a end L. So let's add that. Okay. And now when I submit for grading again, now notice you can submit for grading as many times as you want. This is just asking the autograder to look at your code. This is not actually submitting. Okay, what did I do wrong? Oh, whoa, big old typo. When you see a lot of cascading messages like that, maybe you just made a plain old typo, because one left arrow, or left angle bracket is not going to mean anything. It's still going to give me some points off, but it should be probably 9 out of 10. And the reason for that is now that carriage return it's looking for is there, right? But I printed out 1.9 and the output was 1.90. So let's fix that. So I could say cout set precision to fixed, right? That should be correct. And we have IO manip in there, so that should work. And let's see what we got. Okay. Again, the reason this is so important is as we go on, we're going to be developing sort of a collection of methods, of functions that will do things for us. And if we write them in this way where they don't do any input or output, all they do is just calculation, then we can take those functions, use them anywhere. But if the function includes its own input or output, we can only use it somewhere where that's the input or output we wanted. So this looks like 10 out of 10. That's good. But the important thing here really is, what are the things that can go wrong? Well, you might submit for grading. It'll give a syntax error, in which case it'll give you no points at all. It won't even try to give points because it can't run the program. If you've hard-coded your code so that it always gives one answer, then one of the tests will always succeed, right? If you're writing, it's like you're writing to the test. So if I wrote a program that said no matter what you type in, I'm going to put out 1.9, this test would still be right. So the only reason you know it's good is because when you pass it different values, it actually gives you the right answer. Cool. So now we've looked both at how this is used as a separate function and also how it is converted to printout. What you're going to find is this structure of method and main as 2 separate things is going to be used for all the remaining labs in this chapter. So that'll give you a good structure for that. All right. As for upcoming assignments, you're going to find after the reading that I've gotten into some discussion of games, either text-based parser games or text-based choice games. You might look at some of these because this is going to give us some ideas for what are the things that we could conceivably make. We do not currently have the technological skill, in this class to build like a 3D graphical multimedia game, but we can easily build a text game, especially if you think about how we already know how to use vectors to store collections of data. So when you start looking at these games and you see going from room to room or from choice to choice, those might be items in a vector. Okay, I'm going to leave that for now, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.